All right, we'll go ahead and get started. This is Mickey with the Savick Buy Group. Thank you guys for joining us today. With us, we have Lizzie and Brittany with RPM. They are our grant partner. We've launched this partnership about 6 months ago. We've got a great opportunity for these young ladies to really help you find what you need, find a grant that's appropriate, and to help you at your heart's content. So with that, I'll hand it over. Lizzie, I'm handing it to you.
Yep, thank you, Mickey.
All right, thank you.
So we know everyone's busy. We'll plan to go through content for about 15 minutes today, and then we'll leave some time for questions at the end. Feel free to also send questions in the chat as we're talking. And also we are recording this presentation so that you can refer back to it later if you'd like to review. Or if you need to leave at some point while we are talking, you can come back and finish up and see what you missed. So like Mickey said, we are Lizzie and Brittany, and our company is Research and Project Management, LLC, or RPM for short. We're finance and project management professionals with a history of working with a variety of organizations, including nonprofit organizations. And we have 20 combined years of experience with obtaining and managing diverse funding streams, including federal funding. We have experience in and we're passionate about leading and improving organizations with a focus on efficient operations and transparency, especially with regard to fiscal management, reporting deadlines, and all of those fun things involved with managing grant funding. And finally, we're passionate about partnering with clients to identify and manage funding solutions that improve their quality of life and enable them to support those in their communities. What we do is make it easier to seek, secure, and manage funded projects, including grant-funded projects. We offer services that span the full range of obtaining, managing funding. So really, those steps boil down to 3 different areas of support that we offer. The first is applying for funding and grants. In terms of that category, we're able to help with identifying grant opportunities that span across federal, state, regional, and local levels. We're also able to help with the application process itself. So helping you effectively tell your story in a way that's written to win so that you can do more to fund your organization and your community. Second, we help with managing funding, including grant funding. In that realm, we help simplify what can feel like a really overwhelming process. So for example, when folks receive grant funding, questions come up like, what reporting deadlines are coming up in the next 30 days, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even year? Where do I send reports when they're completed and due? How do I request reimbursement from an agency that's funding me? Am I complying with all of a grant's rules and regulations? Where should I store my grant-related documents and who should have access to them? So those sorts of questions we help answer, and we also can help with those management steps. And finally, we provide general administrative and organizational support. We help organizations maximize their administrative efficiency by supporting day-to-day processes as needed. So our support in these areas can include things like helping with procurement and contracting, managing outgoing payments, helping with data organization, and even general communications. Our services are provided at different rates. We work with potential clients to determine what our fees will be depending on the extent of our involvement, but also Savick members get a discount on all of our services. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Brittany for our next slide.
Hi, everyone. So one of the things that I want to talk about is what it's like to work with us. So we know that the world of grants can be both really exciting and really overwhelming. And so the first thing that we do is we like to set up a consultation. And so what that looks like is a Zoom or a phone call. We tend to prefer Zoom just so we can kind of see face to face and open the doors up a little easier there. But we can certainly do phone also. And so we like to get to know each other. So what are your general goals and priorities? What's the community like that you serve? What's your operating budget like, and where are there big deficits? What do you need? And kind of what are your priority areas, and what's the timeline for those priorities? So that way we can start figuring out what we need to do next. And so that next stage after the consultation is where Lizzie and I behind the scenes do a bunch of research. So we take all of your priorities, all your goals, and kind of the amounts of funding that you're telling us you need, and we start looking for grant opportunities. And sometimes we may be able to find 4 or 5 smaller grants, so $10,000 to $50,000 a piece, that could support one larger initiative, or we may find one large grant that could support a large initiative. We also can find grants to support things like training. So it really depends on what your organization's needs are for how we determine how to move forward. But we do a lot of that behind the scenes. So then we'll schedule another meeting with you, and we're going to develop an application strategy. And so that's us talking about, here's these grant opportunities that we found. Here's how we think they're applicable. Here's what the timelines are. Here's kind of what we would need to get started. And then we figure out, are we doing the grant writing as RPM for you? Or do you potentially have a grant writer on staff who can handle that, but you just maybe need some additional consulting support for us? Or maybe you don't need that at all, and you just want some grant management support once you get the application and potentially get grant funded. So we offer services in all of those areas. And so we can kind of figure out, what does that look like? And another thing that's really important to mention is that all grants are really very different. So what they look like, what the funder is looking for, and how you apply. So some foundational grants or smaller grants, local state agencies, are as simple as filling out a form and sending an email. Other federal grants are much more complex and can be hundreds of pages, and require very specific forms to be submitted in very specific formats. And so again, we offer support in all of those areas so that that is not a barrier that keeps you from success when you're interested in applying for grant funding. So once we have that application strategy and we have a plan moving forward, we're actually going to apply for funding. So when we do that, we're going to prepare the formal application. We're going to review it. We'll give you a final pass at it at your organization to review it. And then we're going to finalize the application. And as part of that process, what we're really doing is we're saying that whatever that grant was that we're applying for, and whatever your goal was that you needed funding for, truly mesh when it comes to the application. So did we have to stretch it too much to where you may not actually be a priority for that funder anymore, and then it lessens the chance that we're going to get grant funding? So we want to make sure that after we laid everything out on the table and actually wrote the application, we need to take a final pass at it and make sure that we're still hitting all of those marks so that your goals still match the funder's priorities. Because that, a lot of times, if it's on a scoring rubric, can make a big difference. It can be the difference between getting funded and not getting funded. And so we're going to take one last pass at it. We're going to officially apply. And then once we've done that and we're sure that all the goals align, everything that is necessary for application is ready to be submitted, and we finally push that button, we can take a few minutes to breathe. And then beyond that, it's really important that we prepare to manage that grant. So a lot of this we would have talked about at various points throughout the application process, but this is when it gets real. So you don't want an agency to send you a notice of award saying that you're getting $1.5 million in a month and you have nothing in place to spend that money and meet those reporting deadlines. We need to have structures in place, and we need to at least have a loose framework of who's going to be responsible for completing the reports, who's going to be the person that submits the reports, who's going to remind everyone on the team that this report is going to be due in 10 days or 30 days or what's going on. And so we're really going to prepare for all of those aspects of things during this waiting period. So a lot of times for larger grants, we know we're going to have to wait for a while. Some foundation grants are specific about how long you will wait before you'll hear, and others really aren't. So it really can be a waiting period, and we just want to make good use of that time. But then once we do know that we are getting that funding, we want to be prepared to implement those funding strategies, because when you take that money, we are fiscally responsible. Well, you are fiscally responsible for spending those funds the way that you said you were going to spend them. And then if not, you have to report back to the agency and, request budget transfers or request specific types of budget allocations. And so we want to make sure that we're really prepared for all of those things, so that you guys have the tools to purchase what you need to better the community and to, one step at a time, make the world a better place. So we want to make sure that you're fully prepared for everything that's going to come your way, from the minute you tell us this is what we're looking for funding wise, to the minute an agency says, hey, congratulations, you got this award. And then pending what we talked about in our management plan, we can also see you all the way through what's formally called a closeout period. So that's every transaction, every final report, every allocation of everything related to that grant is submitted, and everything's closed out with the funding agency. And so this chart that's on the screen really shows a constant loop, because in theory, we're going to want to keep learning and growing, even if you are awarded funding for, say, goal number 1. I imagine there's going to be goals number 2, 3, 4. That we're going to keep applying for. And some of those are going to be larger, some are going to be smaller, and we'll attack those one at a time. But we also can do more than one application at a time. So again, if there are a couple of smaller grants going on, we can certainly make this process happen at various stages simultaneously. But it's definitely something that really does come full circle and is kind of a cyclical pattern, in that we're wrapping things up, but we're always kind of continuing on, because you don't want to just run out of funding and then not be sure what to do next, or not know how to support certain things within the agency. So we like to keep planning and make sure that everything's good to go for everyone and what's in everyone's best interest. So at this point, I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself or pop them over into the chat now. And if not, we have a couple prepared Q&A questions that we can go over that will hopefully help.
I have a question there for you, Brittany. The level to which SAVIC will pay for you doing the grant entirely, what's that threshold?
So anything under $10,000, we offer support completely for free. And then beyond that, our fees are typically 2% of the entire grant application. But everyone gets 15% off that fee. So that's kind of the general gist of things. We have been toying around with some ideas of people who have interest in submitting multiple applications at once, or potentially submitting, a quite large application and don't have that funding up front. So we're open to negotiating those things, because at the end of the day, we really just want everyone to be successful. We have to make a living, but we also we have some ability to give back to the community on our end as well. Thanks to SAVIC supporting this relationship in general, honestly.
Brittany, Lizzie, I'll ask a question too, because I know we have a ton of members out there that may be smaller and may not have as much resources, that think that maybe they can't be benefited from grants. So do you have any advice for these smaller, the more volley departments that really just don't know where to get started with funding?
Yeah, just set up a consultation. I mean, honestly, I think it seems overwhelming, or it seems too good to be true to most people. And that's really why we started this business, is because it's not, it's real. And there are grants for $500. There are grants for $1,500. There are grants to cover the cost of training for members of nonprofit organizations or conference attendance. So it doesn't have to be some big cumbersome application or some long-term multi-million-dollar grant, if it's scary, you know, start off smaller and start off where SAVIC is supporting those resources and we can help apply without any cost to an agency. And then we can build that trust, build that rapport, and over time, work our way up to something bigger if that's what an organization wants. And if not, we can keep working at those small thresholds, because it's really important to take advantage of those opportunities. And we hate to see organizations where they're like, oh, I really wish I could send so-and-so to this training, but we just can't afford it. Well, there's grants out there for that. Not every day, not for every single conference, but if we know that that's a goal and we've already met with an agency, we can put that on our radar and we can reach out when something like that pops up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Did you have some other things that you wanted to go over today?
Well, we can just do another, maybe one or two from our Q&A, and then we can let everyone go. But I think one of the things that we get asked a lot is what sorts of expenses can be funded by grants. And I think I kind of just touched on that a little bit, but I do just want to say the reality is it's pretty much anything. So the one thing that I have found that there tend to be lots of barriers around is just that particularly federal funds have a hard time supporting weapons. But aside from that, as far as actual you know, community engagement or life-saving devices or trainings, I mean, pretty much anything you can think of, there's a grant somewhere at some point in time that we can likely find to, if not cover the entire cost of, at least help support an initiative. And so we think that's pretty cool.
Another FAQ that folks will often ask is, what's the likelihood of receiving grant funding? And the answer there is it really depends. It's different for every grant. It can depend on the amount of funding that the funder has available, the quantity and competitiveness of applicants, how good of a fit your application is for what they want to fund. It truly varies, but like Brittany said, you know, there's no harm in trying. And I think especially with regard to where we can support those applications under $10,000, like that's a great place to start. Just try to throw your hat in the ring and see what happens.
Yeah. I think that's probably good for now, but we, you know, Lizzie had our information up on the screen a minute ago, but you can reach out to us at any time with questions. Check out our website. We're happy to respond to anything, even if you're not ready to set up that consultation. If you want to send us 5 questions, that's fine too. We'll respond and we'll get to where we need to be eventually. We're happy to help everyone navigate this journey at their own pace.
Ladies, thank you both for your time today. I really appreciate you know, the level of expertise you're going to bring to this and the assistance that these public agencies need. So thank you again for your time, and we're going to be sure to share this message with everybody out now.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Mickey.
Looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Bye.